right, a very good morning for those that went with us into the break. I would like to welcome whoever is joining us on Morning at 10 TV from across the world. Of course, we do know that those that are watching from across the borders. Business Update is the segment that you find us at. Car importers on court-ordered taxation rules. There's a bit of contention. Before I introduce my guest, who shall be giving us perspective and the latest in that stead, let me just give you a preamble. The importation of used motor vehicles has previously caused confusion amongst taxpayers and the Uganda Revenue Authority in regards to valuation. On one hand, taxpayers argue that used cars and other used items imported into the country should always be valued using the transaction value method, which is the price actually paid or payable on the goods as reflected on the import documents. This valuation method assumes that import documents are always correct. On the other hand, Uganda Revenue Authority argues that any used items, including second-hand motor vehicles, ought to be valued using what's described as the fallback method, which is determined by using all the valuation methods in a flexible manner while considering the prevalent market price at the time of importation of that motor vehicle. Benedict Muhanguzi is the Chief Executive Officer at Kabuguzi Motors and is going to help us understand what are the issues of contention and how exactly do they want this resolved. A very good morning and welcome to the program, Mr. Muhanguzi. Buhanguzi had put an M where a B is. That is so uncharacteristic. How are you?
Fine. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, viewers at NTV.
Bring us up to speed with what you are and comfortable with, first as a dealer, but also as an industry stakeholder.
Thank you so much, Chris. Indeed, this has been a very contentious issue. Way back in 2010, we've seen quite a number of things unfolding in this matter. And it turns out that in 2010, one of the commissioners at TRA, who is that was at that time in charge of customs, happened to suspend the method which was used to make assessments for taxes, and he suspended the value-based method of assessing for taxation. And ideally, the simple principles of taxation, there has to be a bit of fairness and certainty. If you have to buy a car, note that I'm going for a Subaru Forester 2010 or any other car, a Prado, I'll be in position to pay this much, so that you can be certain. Of course, you know there are budget lines involved. So we find that when the commissioner suspended this method, the URA guys were now adopting another alternative method, which you can call fallback method. And in this case, they have certain formula they use based on, I think, at least 4 aspects. They look at number of the year of manufacture of the car, and they also look at the consumption, the other model codes that they use based on their guidelines. And you find that on importation, you have imported a car, take for instance from Japan, you've negotiated well and you've gotten it at, take for instance, $5,000 US. That can be converted into around 18.5 million UGX based on the rate. But there's another party who has possibly bought the same car from another supplier and is getting a deal from Japan at a different price. But the unfair part of it that is coming out from this case is that these people, you find that you all be paying the same taxes. But ideally, in the real sense, you find that the tax should be based on the value of that particular car. Well, URA came up with their reasons on why they had to drop the other method.
What were the reasons?
Highlighting that they find it hard to ascertain the value of those cars with at how much they imported from Japan, based on some allegation that there are some receipts that are not genuinely shared with them, and at the same time some of them are forged. But you realize that on car importation, these cars come with the documents. Take for instance, you have the bills of lading, you have the unit-based guys who actually get the unit-based inspection papers, and they're the same that are used to make assessments for these cars. So we found that after dropping that method, which was fair, one of the dealers, actually in this case, who is called one of the dealers had to go to court, of course, to express their discomfort. And in this case, which was actually presided over by Justice Drama Christophe, find that there was Justice Madrama Christophe, you find that there was a ruling which was reached at, and URA was ordered to adopt the method which was actually quoted in Section 122, subsection 1 of the East African Community Management Act, okay, where you find that these customs, the Act actually says that, I can read it verbatim, it says, where imported goods are liable to import duty ad valorem tax. Ad valorem tax, you can call it, take for instance, if you bought this phone at 100,000, and you may be supposed to pay tax, the assessment for that tax should be based on the 100,000. Not on maybe it has a nice cover, it has a nice camera, and any other issues that would make the tax higher than the value of the good. Or
any other quality that is discovered after the purchase has been done.
Absolutely. So we find that the judgment which was reached at was directing URA to go to the original method, which is actually quoted in the East African Community Customs Management Act. And we find that the URA guys, after getting this ruling, which was actually way back in 2010, they had to appeal with the Court of Appeal. And there was also another ruling delivered by the panel of judges, of course, led by Lady Justice Catherine Wamgemerire, and she also ruled the same, that the first method, which was actually quoted in the East African Community Management Act of 2004, is the one that you should be used to make these assessments, because it brings out the fairness, and it's still quoted in the law. So you find that our colleagues at URA, our partners actually, because they are business partners, without them we can't do, went with something that was unlawful and unfair. So here we are saying that we could possibly constitute a dialogue. We look for means of having a neutral ground of making the assessments that are fair to the dealers and of course the general public, because actually the dealers are not the ones who buy these cars. It's the general public. For us mainly actually we bring in a professional touch of making sure that these cars are delivered and cleared and handed over to the dealers. So that's the contestation that is at hand, and we are waiting to hear from URA what they have to consider themselves so that we can be able to reach harmonized positions and be in position to serve the people in the right manner.
Looking at it from the point of view of the taxman and the need to widen the tax base, URA has rolled out a whole litany of new taxes, and
absolutely,
yeah, you can understand why the tax body wants to be able to get as enough as it can. Looking at the side of the importers and the dealers, when it comes to documentation and the purchase of vehicles from the original sellers, either in Japan or any other country from where you're getting these, what is the criteria like? Why is it that URA seems not to have an idea of the documentation framework and has to depend on you to the extent that they allege that most of these documents are either fake or misrepresented?
I think we could borrow a little from these guys of UNBS. You see, it was around 2018 where UNBS was requesting for inspection, because remember there has been quite a number of things like changing the years of manufacture that have to be imported into the country. That's now right. We are at 15 years plus. So there was quite a number of engagements with Japanese, and they reached a consent of saying that the UNBS should get the inspection done from Japan. And these inspection papers are the same papers that are dispatched together with the bills of lading. They can also come along with the receipts, which are genuine. I don't think they can be forged as alleged by URA, because these documents are genuine. They're the ones that have the details of the car, and they're the ones that will have the cost of the car. I really believe that URA can reach that stage of having a neutral ground with the dealers together with the general public, so that we can be in a position to ascertain these costs of the cars. If not, okay, if they cannot ascertain them through the dealers, they can ascertain them through the suppliers, because the suppliers' channels are very open. Whichever channels, we have quite a number of suppliers in Uganda here. We have B-Forward, we have SBT, we have ICM, we have quite a number of them. So I believe URA can still be in a position to ascertain those documents and be able to verify them, so that they can base on the right method, which is quoted in the law, than going unlawful, and actually so turns out to be unfair. So
in other words, you're telling URA to adopt the PVOC system as used by the Uganda National Bureau of Standards?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Because we've seen quite a number of evolutions are around car importation. UN-based was being done from Mombasa. I mean, the inspection at first, so they decided now it can be done from Japan, and the reports are sent henceforth through different suppliers, and they are actually acknowledged by UNBS, and the cars are certified to be roadworthy, to be on the road.
Are your sector players ready to meet the cost of inspection in Japan?
Already we do, because for every car actually that comes is always inspected. That's why you see when we are getting these cars, we base them on what we call the CIF. The CIF here will take care of the cost of the car.
CIF being?
Yes, actually we take CIIF. These days we take the cost of the car, insurance, inspection.
Cost, insurance, inspection.
And the flight.
And flight.
Flight in the sense of the shipping.
Yeah, shipping.
So all those issues, I'm sure they can be put into consideration, and URA can be in position to come to a neutral ground with the public and the dealers, so that we can avoid this back and forth, because already there has been another appeal and we are yet to hear from their position. So that are their partners, and as we partner with them, we can do business without any scuffle. All right,
now let's go to the general question as we wind up this discussion. Many Ugandans are concerned at the quality of the cars being imported, especially the second hand. Some even claim that these cars are 14th hand. Interesting there.
True.
And many of them, when you look at them in the bonds across the city, you can actually see that they are qualities. Not actually, not even fourth hand, but a little bit further down the road. What is the state of affairs right now? For you, you're a businessman. I'm sure Ugandans can buy anything as long as you avail it to them.
True.
Anyone wants to drive around. But what is the ideal scenario given what is being done in Kenya?
Thank you so much, Chris. Like I told you, there have been quite a number of issues evolving around this area. We've seen URA coming in, which actually we thank them for, the General Public Parliament Act passing some acts where there are some cars that are not supposed to be imported. Take, for instance, cars that are 15 years old cannot be imported in the country. So what I would really encourage people there, you need to look out for a vehicle from, first of all, a reliable supplier. That's why we're here. Number two, make sure that every car that comes has to be inspected. Because inspection captures quite a number of issues. It looks at the quality of the engine. Like for instance, at Kavugizi Motors, if you get any engine issues with the car, we would rather decline it, ship another car. Because we do inspection. That's part of the money that you pay.
That's right.
Inspection is done also on the health of the engine. Of course, the year manufacturer, we cannot compromise on that. And even the body. You just look at the car and you tell, but the looks of this body, no scratches, no dents. They could be minor dents, but most especially we consider the engine health, because we're not in business for today and tomorrow. We want to have sustainable business. That's and right. Would expect if you buy a car, would definitely enjoy it for some time, not to drive a car after 1 year and you have issues. So we always encourage customers to look out for certified suppliers and dealers and make sure these cars are certified as well as inspected.
All right, lastly, what is URA willing to engage, or they've demonstrated reluctance to bring you on board in order to find common ground?
We would really be glad to engage with them because they are our partners. We have really appreciated. We worked a long way with them.
Third party?
URA as themselves, they have not come out to pronounce themselves on this matter, but we are yet to hear. If there is any way of appealing, of course it's their right. But we'd really want to, of course, have a neutral ground so that in the interest of the public, we can work together. And definitely anyone would definitely want to pay taxes, but in a manner that is harmonized, not back and forth. Because these other things also keep causing issues. So we really want to have a discussion with them, if need be, so that we can reach a harmonized and neutral ground and we serve our nation.
All right, Benedict Mohanguzi, Chief Executive Officer at Kavugizi Motors, many thanks for sharing your views and perspective on what is no doubt an issue of contention when it comes to taxation of imported cars in the country. I hope Uganda Revenue Authority can come through and have the conversation as and how these stakeholders want it for the better of the Ugandan but also for the better of tax revenue collection. That will do it for our business update. We shall be discussing next in the Kickstarter the politics in the region in light of the latest round of political turmoil in Sudan, but also developments here at home, especially within the National Unity Platform. Priscilla Regina Naloga shall be at hand to handle that. Stay with